Hello everybody and welcome to the January 30th, 2019 edition of the Ephrom Josine Show. I am your host, Ephrom Josine. So we finally know, or we've actually known for a few days now, and I just haven't gotten around to covering it, who is going to give the response to the State of the Union, which is going to happen on February 5th. And yes, I will be live commentating on it at my Twitter over at EphромJosine1. I will also, just before the State of the Union, probably about a day or two before, pin my previous thread on last year's State of the Union. But anyway, last year the person they had rebut it was Joe Kennedy, who nobody remembers, and that's because he was Joe Kennedy. However, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer announced this year it's going to be Stacey Abrams, and to be fair, I like Stacey Abrams. I think she's overall a very good progressive. However, at the same time, I don't really feel like she's the right choice. Her highest position in government so far has been the Minority Leader of the Georgia House of Representatives. And she lost her run for governor. Well, okay, she did win, but, you know, then the other guy got in, and there was some rigging, and long story short, she's not governor. You know, I'm just happy that there's nothing new to cover involving the 2020 election. You know, everything has just been the exact same for them. Okay, I'll cover Howard Schultz. That didn't take much convincing. Yes, former Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz has more or less been running for president. Now, to be fair, we don't know whether or not it's legitimate. After all, there were stories Mark Zuckerberg was running for president a few years ago, and that went nowhere. But it's close to the election now, and he's releasing a book, and that's typically a sign people are running, and he's actually going out and talking about running for president. There's a very good chance it's just a publicity stunt, but the mainstream media is taking it seriously. Let's start with this fact. Schultz is running as an independent, assuming he's running at all. Now, if Howard Schultz was a progressive, he would be laughed at best, assuming he wasn't just ignored. He also left the Democratic Party to go run as an independent. Now again, if this were to happen to someone who wasn't a billionaire, the mainstream media would be screaming at him, assuming they weren't ignoring him. But he can become an independent, and Michael Bloomberg can go from a Republican to an independent to maybe a Democrat, kind of not really, because they're both billionaires, and that's how our system works. There's a game I'm doing to make this point, and that is anytime I see an article about Howard Schultz's presidential campaign, I post this political comic from 2004. It's a decently famous one. It's one where there are two buildings. The first one is the Nader 2004 presidential campaign headquarters, which for some reason has a giant window in one of the sides and not a door. And Ralph Nader is standing there next to some guy behind, I assume, a blank wall, going, "The announcement of my candidacy is sweeping across America. I can feel the excitement." And then right next to it is the Republican headquarters, and you know this because it has a giant sign that says Republican headquarters, which, of course, would just be a one-story building. And you can see two Republicans jumping up and down in excitement out of the giant window in the middle of the room, or in the middle of the wall, which all headquarters have. This is stupid on 8 different levels. Howard Schultz has decided to run, maybe, we still aren't certain, because of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and her big-nosed, evil 70% marginal tax rate. What? They do the everything, they do the you disliking something makes you anti-Semitic thing all the time. I just wanted to do it for once. Can I also just take a moment to say that 1 or 2 progressives get elected and everybody loses their mind, but when about 100 anti-government extremists got elected in 2010, they were revolutionaries who were going to bring us into a new age of patriotism and constitutionalism and all of that, and they were voices we needed to listen to. These people are silly. Schultz also said that, quote, if Trump runs against a far-left progressive person, President Trump is going to get reelected. Now, quite frankly, he's not in the Democratic Party, so I don't know if it's really okay for him to give us advice, considering he's running against us, and therefore it actually being his best interest for us to nominate a bad candidate. But apparently, I don't have the brain cells made of expired mayonnaise like everybody else in this world. But okay, what is Howard Schultz running on so far? The answer is nothing. He's just sort of running against things. Most notably, Medicare for All and free college, which are weird things to run against considering we already don't have them. And for that matter, Donald isn't planning on implementing either of them, so just sort of running against things that don't exist is just nonsense. That's like me running a presidential campaign against the boogeyman. That's how seriously I take Howard Schultz. The last thing of note is that he was originally planned to be Hillary Clinton's Secretary of Labor, aka the person who lost, and now he's going around lecturing people about how to win when, again, he worked for the person who lost. At what point do we just ignore him until he dies, or goes away, or whatever it is CEOs do? From here on out, I will also treat his candidacy with nothing but the utmost mockery because, quite frankly, that's what it deserves. He is the most obnoxious, pretentious brat that is currently running, and that's saying something considering there is also someone running for re-election. Anyway, now let's talk about someone who actually matters. So Kamala Harris held a town hall a few days ago in which she came out in support of Medicare for All. And now, less than 24 hours after that, her advisor said she changed her mind, saying, quote, she would also be open to a more moderate health reform plan, which would preserve the industry. So, what we already had with the Affordable Care Act? That's what the Affordable Care Act was designed to do. Quite frankly, it was the most moderate reform that could have been done. And Republicans still didn't vote for it. It's like you can't reason with unreasonable people or something along those lines. I don't know, maybe I'm just crazy. Of course she doesn't actually have a health reform package other than just repass Obamacare 8 more times, and then eventually Republicans will stop attacking it. This is despite the fact that while the Affordable Care Act did have several strengths and is decently popular, it's not enough to run a campaign on. Honest to God, Obama's numbers tanked as soon as that thing got rolled out and passed, and people just did not care for it. It wasn't satisfying the right-wingers, libertarians who wanted a free market solution, and the progressives, as well as the majority of the country, wanted a single-payer healthcare system. So at that point, what Kamala Harris is promoting is making nobody happy, and just sort of hoping that will make everybody happy. Maybe her healthcare plan will involve putting Brave New World-style drugs in the water supply, and that's how she's going to make everybody happy. Because quite frankly, I don't see any other way. Anyway, I'm Ephrom, and good night.